Hello and welcome to Biblical Breadcrumbs. In this episode, we'll be in Matthew 26, starting in verse 6, spending our time going through verse 16, and we'll be looking at that passage, at that incident there, and a couple of stories about Jesus and his followers. If you're listening to this on audio, it might sound a little bit different because I'm trying a new recording setup, a recording that is actually accompanied with a video. I'm going to try to put this on YouTube somewhere, somehow, some way. I'm going to try to figure that out. And so if you're interested in seeing a video, there's going to be nothing special about that. It's just going to be me sitting here talking. But I'm going to try to put that on YouTube and for that to be a new medium by which other people can maybe see this and maybe have an interest in the things we have to talk about. But we're going to be in Matthew 26, and hope the audio works well for you. We'll be in Matthew 26, starting in verse 6. Last time, what we were talking about in the first part of Matthew 26 is it has to do with Jesus dealing with his disciples. And so he finishes his last sermon in chapters 23, 24, and 25. Now we get to chapter 26. And Jesus says, okay, so I'm about to die here in 2 days. This is apparently, this is Tuesday night or Wednesday morning, maybe. And he says, I'm about to die here in 2 days. He is taken into custody on a Thursday night, going to be executed on a Friday morning. That's where we get Good Friday from. And so as he's sitting here on this Tuesday or Wednesday, he tells his disciples, I'm about to die. Meanwhile, the chief priests and the elders and the scribes are trying to set up for Jesus to die soon. They don't know when, not during the festival. They don't want to scare the people, but rather than I don't know, listening to their consciences and realizing that people will not like it very much if they kill God. Rather than realizing that these people are going to get invested in killing him to remove him, they just don't want to do it publicly right now because it's not going to go very well for them if they do end up doing it publicly. So, with that in mind, Jesus is not in Jerusalem because there are a bunch of people who want to kill him in Jerusalem, and he doesn't want any part of that. He wants to be in Bethany, a nearby town. And so we pick up reading in Matthew 26 in verse 6. While Jesus was in Bethany, at the house of Simon the leper, a woman approached him with an alabaster jar of very expensive perfume. She poured it on his head as he was reclining at the table. When the disciples saw this, they were indignant. Why this waste? They asked. This might have been sold for a great deal and given to the poor. And aware of this, Jesus said to them, Why are you bothering this woman? She has done a noble thing for me. You always have the poor with you, but you do not always have me. By pouring this perfume on my body, she has prepared me for burial. Truly I tell you, wherever this gospel is proclaimed in the whole world, what she has done will also be told in memory of her. Then one of the 12, a man called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and said, What are you willing to give me if I hand him over to you? So they weighed out 30 pieces of silver for him. And from that time he started looking for a good opportunity to betray him. Here we have a record of Jesus. He is in Bethany. He is at the house of a leper. Simon the leper, we don't know who he is, but presumably if Jesus is hanging out in his house, he's probably cleansed Simon of his leprosy. Simon would be a first-hand witness to the power of Jesus, and Jesus is spending his time, or at least his evenings there. And so he's in Bethany, and this woman hunts him down. We don't know who she is. Not from Matthew's account, anyway. We're not told who she is. She does have a jar of perfume, however big that was. I don't know the measurements of an alabaster jar, but she has however much perfume, and she just kind of dumps it on Jesus's head, right? And so it's this weird picture of, okay, well, why are you doing that? Weird. And the disciples feel the same way, right? They say, Why did she just do that? Why did she just waste all of that? Those are precious resources that we can sell for a lot of money. Why did she just waste those on you, Jesus? And maybe when you see that, maybe when you see that comment right there, that might explain their questionable attitudes. See, what we would do is we would look at verse 9, we would see their indignance, and we would say, okay, yeah, that's fair. Why would she waste that? That's the very human view. That's what the disciples saw. That's what we would see. And yet, as much as we might think that's fair, they're ignoring her heart. And they're ignoring how good she is. They're ignoring how good she's being. They are ignoring her. She is being good. She has a good heart, and she knows what to do. She is giving to Jesus as she can. She is doing her best in her situation. She is using the blessings that she has to impart those upon Jesus and give something valuable to him. And yet, even as she's doing that, she's being corrected by his disciples who are looking and seeing the money value of something. This is going to come up in a minute. They're looking and seeing the monetary value of something, and they're saying, you could have used that for something more worthwhile. Firstly, who's more worthwhile than Jesus? None. Yes. Okay, exactly. Right. And so you have this concept where suddenly these people are horrifically off. Why we might say, okay, if one of my friends got a bunch of like expensive looking perfume dumped on them, that might be a waste because my friends are not that great, right? They're not worth that much. Even though we might see it like that, who is more worthy than Jesus is? Well, no one. Not anyone, not anywhere close. And so as they focus on the money, as they follow the money, as they focus on the little resources that they have missed the entire point, and they have miscalculated in what they pay attention to. They are not giving Jesus the goodness that he deserves. And that is not a very good place to be in. And so Jesus says, why are you bothering her? She's done the right thing. She's done something for me, and you guys haven't. She's been useful to me, and you guys aren't. She's been giving to me, and your spirits are off. She has been good, and you are not understanding something here. What's the problem? They don't see Jesus' importance. They don't see that the end is coming. They apparently don't, because Jesus is important, Jesus is key, and yet these people, these disciples of his, the ones that he told he was going to die in just a couple of days, they are not making preparations for his burial, but this woman is. She understands Jesus and what's coming more than the disciples do. I don't know that she knew. I don't know if she knew that Jesus was coming or not. I don't know if she knew that Jesus was going to show up. I don't know if she knew that Jesus was going to die, and die so soon. I wouldn't expect that she knew that. But what Jesus is saying is, disciples, you should recognize that this is important, that there is my death coming, but you still don't care. I'm going to be gone after 2 days. I'm a dying man. I'm on my deathbed. I've got my last requests here, and yet you're not fulfilling those because you think I'm going to live. Disciples, why are you not understanding this? I don't know if the woman knew that Jesus was dying or if she didn't know that Jesus was dying, but either way, the disciples should know, but they apparently don't. And Jesus makes that very clear. And then, in response to this just mind-numbingly ludicrous, but like not in a fun and good way, just absolutely ridiculous. One of the disciples goes and focuses on the money, right? Right. Jesus tells his disciples he's going to die, and then they say no, and then Peter says, "No, you're not." And then Jesus has to correct Peter because Peter doesn't understand what he's talking about. Jesus tells his disciples he's going to die, and they say, "Yeah, but we don't care. What about the money?" And so Judas, in keeping with that, doesn't care and goes after the money. just like just like they did earlier. They haven't learned. They haven't learned anything. They've been with Jesus for how long, and yet they have not figured out who he is. They haven't learned anything. They're not equipping themselves for anything. They're not preparing for anything. If he dies, I guess he dies. But that's not the proper response that they should be having. And so the question they have to the answer is, what are they going to do about him dying? Judas answers that by going and expediting his death. We're going to go and we're going to assist. What would you be willing to give me if I handed him over to you? Can can I help you? Can I gain something out of this? Can I get money? The disciples are focused on money. All of them are. Judas gets a bad reputation for it, but all of them are focused on this funding. Judas is just the one who's going to actually kill Jesus instead of just not caring that Jesus is going to die. That's a problem. That's very, very much a problem. We don't know why Judas went to do this right now. We don't know why Judas decided to um, go to the chief priest just now. And it may well have been that he's gone before this point in time, before this Tuesday or Wednesday night or whenever it was. It may well be that he's been gone and gone and set this up before, but Matthew is recording it in such a way that Judas is reacting to the loss of money by going and securing money for himself. That is not good. That is not good. There is no universe in which that is a good thing. He just decides to do it. And from that time, he started looking for a good opportunity to betray him. What do you see about this story? What's useful in this story? What do we need to learn from this story? Well, just one primary thing is that Jesus is key. Jesus is important. Jesus is the focus of everything. Jesus is the center of everything. And when his disciples fail to recognize that, when his disciples go chasing the money from the perfume instead of him, when the disciples go after themselves instead of him, they failed and they've messed up. They've missed the entire point. Jesus told them he was going to die, and they've basically said, yeah, so what? What do we get out of it? And that's not a very good attitude to have, you know? Is that fair to say? That's not a very good attitude to have. And so the disciples are money chasers and greedy and going after this, and they say it's for the poor, and maybe that's good, but Jesus is more important than the poor. Jesus is better. Jesus is primary. Jesus is more. But at the same time, Jesus turns that around on them. As good as Jesus is, and as key as Jesus is, and as much as we should be taking care of him right now, and when he's here with us, and we should be doing his work, and we should be calling on him, and we should be relying on him, as much as that is true, hear me carefully, as much as that is true, and Jesus is primary, remember this in verse 11, you always have the poor with you, but you do not always have me. So when you have Jesus with you, you're supposed to give to him. But when Jesus is gone, well, that's the time to give to the poor. Do you remember chapter 25? Do you remember just like a page before in my Bible, just the page previous? Jesus says, you did good to me. How did we do good to you? Because there were people who needed me. There were people who needed help. And you provided it for them. You gave them food, you gave them shelter, you gave them clothing, you visited them when they were sick. You always have poor people with you. You don't always have Jesus with you, and so sometimes you need to prioritize Jesus when he's with you and about to leave 2 days from now. Maybe you need to be listening, maybe you need to be caring, maybe you need to be spending as much time with him as you possibly can. But when Jesus leaves, there are all these poor people that you need to help. And what does Jesus say in Matthew 25? As much as you helped those little ones, you helped me. And as much as you didn't help those little ones, as much as you ignored them, you ignored me. Jesus is primary, and our care needs to be focused on him. Our hearts need to be focused on him. We're supposed to be towards him and for him and everything good towards him. But at the same time, we do need to be focusing the outside on the outside work, on helping other people, on helping the poor who can't help themselves. That's what Jesus would do. That's what we are supposed to do too. It's not that, um, let me think of words here. It's not that the poor are unimportant, but compared to Jesus, everything is unimportant, right? And so you're supposed to glorify Jesus. You're supposed to put him at the center of everything. When he's gone, how do you put him at the center of everything? You go and care for the poor. The disciples may have had very good intentions on saying, hey, why did she spend it like this? She could have cared for the poor instead. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. That's a God honoring thing. That's something that Jesus himself has called for just the chapter before. Maybe they were listening. And yet, when it comes down to it, they have put the poor in a position over Jesus where they said the poor are more important than Jesus. And that is an absolute failure to understand what he's saying. The only reason, and listen to me carefully for this one. The only reason that we care about poor people is because God cares for the poor people. The only reason we care about people whatsoever is because God made them in his image. If God didn't make people in his image, I wouldn't have to care about them. If God didn't make people in his image, if God didn't care about the poor people, if God wanted them to suffer, then I would let them suffer too, because that's what he wants. But the thing is, God does care for the poor people. God did make man in his image, and so I am supposed to care for him, and that is how I honor God. That is how I glorify God and honor Jesus, is to actually care for the poor people and to look out for other human beings because I care about them because God made them. That's the reason given for why we should care about people. In a society in which God does not factor, in a society, in an American society, where everything is secular, right? American, and who else listens to this recording series? America, Germany, Canada, and a few other places every now and then. In all of our societies, morality is declining, and life is degrading, and nothing good is happening. But here's the thing: is that God is still there. God still made those people, and God still cares. As much as is within you, then you go and help other people because God cares about them. In the relativistic society out there, outside of my window, in the society that doesn't care about God, they don't care about other people and they don't treat them well because you don't have to, because humans don't matter. If God doesn't exist, humans are irrelevant and I don't have to care. But because God does exist, I do get to care. I do get to help people, and I am blessed to be able to serve other human beings. I hope that makes sense. Jesus is key, and honor him. And when he's not physically present with you, in his absence, you care for those who are helpless and who cannot help themselves, who cannot get themselves out of the situations that they are in, who are in desperate need. You care for them just as God has commanded you. I hope that makes sense. I hope that's helpful, something good to think about as we go through our week, whatever that looks like. Be on the lookout for other people, because God is not here anymore in a sense. Jesus is not physically here with us, and so I'm not going to dedicate my time to sitting at the feet of Jesus, because he's not literally here to sit at the feet of. But you know how I honor him, how I respect him, how I do good, how I obey him is by going out and actually helping other people in all sorts of different ways, all sorts of different um, ways in which you can accomplish that. Go out and do it, and go help those other people. The woman saw Jesus as the immediate need. The disciples saw the poor as the immediate need. And Jesus says, no, you care about me. Because when you care about God, you start caring about other people even more than you already do. And God gives us the purpose as to why we should care about other people. Hopefully that's helpful and that's something worthwhile and worth considering. Hopefully the audio holds up for those of you who are listening to the audio, and we'll see where the video goes up. I'm not exactly sure yet. I'm not sure what the YouTube channel will be officially called. I've got some ideas, but I don't want to say anything permanent yet because honestly, some of the ideas are kind of silly sounding until I implement them, and then they will be equally silly sounding, but it'll be fine. And so, who knows? But I will get that up on YouTube sometime in this next week. Hopefully, fingers crossed and everything. We will put this on YouTube, and then we will proceed with both formats. I don't plan on taking away the audios only, but I do plan on adding video, and as a part of that, the audio is probably going to change a little bit, but hopefully both of those will be serviceable moving forward for whatever medium you prefer. Thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed, hope you benefited from that, and I'll see you on the next episode of Biblical Breadcrumbs.